And Richard runs the Toronto studio for BDP Quadrangle, and he's going to be talking about architectural challenges in commercial office construction. Richard believes in the design and strength of architecture to inspire and realize sustainable, accessible, and responsible urbanization in evolving global cities.
Good.
There you go.
All right, thank you. That, by the way, is the biography from our website, I think. So it's not meant to be spoken, meant to be read.
You've got the clickers, you're good, right?
I think so, yeah.
Perfect.
So, okay, so I can't see it here. Can I see it here?
Pardon me?
I can't see it here. Can I only see it here?
You're going to see there, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, for coming today. I'm going to talk about this primarily through the lens of a single project, but with a bit of an add-on at the end. I want to say, first of all, that I've never not stood behind a podium when I presented, and I feel slightly self-conscious. And given the pitch of the seating, I feel that I should have spent more time on my hair. So the project that I'm going to talk about is 6080, we call it, 60 M80 Atlantic, pictured here in this sketch, which is in Liberty Village, just sort of inner west end of the city. Probably most of you know where it is. It's the building right in the center. This is the finished product, which I'll come back to in a roundabout route. The big 60 there, the super graphic, is the first phase, and the building with Jackman sort of sign at the top is the second phase. To orient the project, you can see here it became a kind of a U-shaped plan. So on the left-hand side at the top there, the gray is 80, the one number 3 is 60 Atlantic, and between it is a kind of shared piazza, which is number 2. The ground floor plan to the right, sorry, I'm going to have to move in a little bit to this one, you can see that to the right-hand side of the screen is Atlantic Avenue, which is a sort of main thoroughfare, and we've prioritized most of the kind of public access and sort of front of house to that side. To the left is Jefferson, and you can see, can I point at this? Oh yeah, okay, good. You can see here, this is all the loading, and then this is not really accessible to Jefferson, and Lamport Stadium is sort of off to the side here. It's got proximity issues, okay. So this is the site as we found it. First started the project actually quite a while ago, in about 2012. The site, actually, I really put this in because when I found it, I was like, wow, I can't remember how long ago it was that we used to have to take all the individual pictures and stitch them together when you couldn't just do the panorama. So it's a bit of a retro moment. But what you can see is the existing building on the left, and to the right where there's that blue P sign was surface parking. And if I zoom in on this, it was a City of Toronto site, declared surplus, and through the artist formerly known as Bill T.O. Was put up for sale and purchased by our client Hallmark. So the existing building here, and to the right there you can see a surface parking. I'm going to just show a few slides on 60 because it sets the stage for how the future evolves. Firstly, when Hallmark bought the site, it wasn't clear that it was a heritage asset and that the building was required to be retained, to a large degree. We spent a lot of time cleaning it up, and if I go back to there, you can see how it's not in such amazing shape. But we added new windows, cleaned all the brickwork. To our surprise, you can't see that face here, but the kind of north facade there was actually buff brick, which we were expecting it all to be red, but I guess they've gone a bit cheap on the north side. Our main intervention in this was to take out all of the kind of service elements, all the corridors, the washrooms and everything, and put them into this new element, which is the 2 corten steel-clad towers and a kind of glass area. So the existing building was built in 3 different phases with 3 different structural types, was at 3 different levels, so there was no path, there was no accessible way to get into the building, which we provided through this, and in addition opened up the floor plates. Sorry, I'm going to come back to the floor plates, but I'll show you some pictures on the inside. On the outside, what I didn't realize actually till much later was why the property line was right at the building face. It was originally set up as train tracks to load into the side here. So we cleaned that up. As you can see there is buff also on the main thoroughfare. Changed the windows, kind of a reinterpretation of kind of building painting with a super graphic of the address here. Now what we wanted to do when the second phase came, which is 80 Atlantic, which is the mass timber building, was to take the best of the post and beam buildings in the 21st century office building and kind of reinvent that brick and beam Tammy Tennant style office building into a new option. So that was to take out, and I maybe some of you have worked in these kind of old brick and beam office buildings, kind of really beautiful and full of character, but kind of dusty and drafty. I worked in one place where every morning I would come in and there'd be kind of brick dust across the drawings on the desk. Wasn't that great? It was the acoustics were terrible, very energy efficient, quite cold. But in kind of newer, in the way that we build new office buildings, you get all of those things solved, but often they lack a bit of soul, a bit of character. And we wanted to bring those two together. As we moved from 60 Atlantic, which was the first phase, which was complete, to 80, we developed this kind of narrative, which you can see here, which is a kind of a raw to refined. So the existing office building was a kind of a raw version, but the refined one sort of built on the same kinds of materials and the same kind of palette, but in a more polished way. So I should have put these probably in a little bit of better order, but when we cleaned out the inside of 60 Atlantic, which was quite a bit of work because it was a rabbit's warren full of drywall, kind of corridors snaking through with kind of these artist studios, some of which were being lived in. It was quite messy, and we stripped it all out, and the space itself is quite elegant. It's quite beautiful. The structure wasn't exactly as we expected because it was all covered. The brick wasn't as we expected because it was all covered. But it looked like this before we began work. This is the tenant which took the top floor, a medical kind of imaging company called it In Vivo. And so you can see that's essentially not exactly the same view, but the same space of the same floor. So these kind of really nice trusses at the top, which create the sloping of the roof, the kind of the expressed wood. Again, the exposed buff brick on the inside is not what we're expecting. But when we moved to 80 Atlantic, which here it is in finished, we really wanted to kind of deliver a very similar character and feel of that expressed wood, but without all of the downsides. Now we could probably have a little rant about heritage, or so-called heritage, for a while, but I will say that whether you want to kind of really engage with the idea of heritage in these old warehouse districts, they do have a certain character and a certain context into which we wanted the building to fit. There's also, we found in our discussions with the Heritage Department, there was a sort of a very singular idea of what the buildings were, of what they were like. And we began with a sort of a survey, and they're all different. They're all different kinds of brick, they're all different kinds of materials, all different kinds of windows, and in different proportions of the apertures. So we began by doing that study, and then moved to an idea of what are modules that we can build on in order to express the new building. And that became something like this. So a number of studies of the scale of things. So rather than an expression, we deliberately chose to avoid creating a kind of a pastiche warehouse expression, but wanted to build on the scale and the feel of those spaces, and created a facade like this. What you see on the bottom left here is an indication of the way that we express the facade by different aspects. So on the north side, for example, there's very little opening, and you can see here that we also decided to sideload the vertical circulation into the top, and I'm going to come back a bit to that maybe in the lessons learned. But to the sides, as you see, this is the Atlantic Avenue facade that you see on the right-hand side here. You can see how that's a certain amount of opening. The north is much less window, and the south again is almost entirely glazed. So I think the challenges, the title of this presentation, I think also and especially the time frame of the project. There's a bit of a lessons learned to this. So the first thing was we very much sought to create a building that was as good as we felt we could do in terms of its sustainable design, and we began with a software that I probably won't mention in order to help us determine what is the right expression for the different facades facing in different aspects. And what it revealed to us, and I think quite sensibly in a certain way, is that we live still, at least for the next 20 years, in a heating climate. And the amount of heat gained during the winter and kind of shoulder seasons much more than offset the amount of solar heat gain in the summer, which meant that we should do a big south-facing facade to capture all of that energy. What it kind of didn't reveal is we probably should have put in some solar shades or something, because it wasn't quite accurate. But we did do a lot of solar control in the glazing. Here's a bit more. The right-hand side here is the Jefferson facade, and you can see how the expression continues in the same way as Atlantic, but then steps up a bit to kind of express the servicing, and as the building kind of intersects, the 80 Atlantic intersects with 60, how that's expressed too. There's also a passage and a connection through which ties the servicing of 60 into the servicing of 80, so we've tried to find economy with those two. In the section here, this is a north-south section with Liberty Street on the south, on the left-hand side, public lane on the right. You can see the various scales of buildings. Both together, the buildings are about 160,000 square feet. Floor plates of 80 are about 18,500 square feet. So the balance in the U shape of 60. What began with 60, one of the first moves was to excavate down what was about, it appears it's a whole level excavated, but it was less than that. It was probably a whole level minus 4 feet, which enabled us to expose the basement of 60 and turn that into a level 1. It also, what's missing in this area, or was missing, I think, is a kind of a semi-public space, or you can see from the old image of 60 with the rail tracks going along, there wasn't really a good public realm. This building is very much about integrating the building with a pedestrian-oriented environment, and in the middle we put this piazza. It was nominally the idea, although it is owned by the brewery, and at the time. I've got season tickets for TFC, and I felt that there wasn't anywhere to go for a drink before the match was necessary, and the client had just been, I think, to Germany, and he'd been to a beer garden. So we had this sort of like beer garden idea, and they got the right tenant, which was fantastic. Sectionally, this is through 80. You can see on the left-hand side the sort of this volume here. This is the servicing area, and this is the retail area at the front. I guess I should say what we really wanted to do with this project, and we began this project in 2015, so quite a long time. It's the first one that's completed of mass timber of this scale in the city, and being a private sector project, I think it's quite unusual for something which is sort of pushing against the norms. Private sector projects tend to be, I think, more predisposed towards established convention. So we wanted to make sure that this project got built. So we have only 2 is right in the center of the building. So from this, kind of zoom in to the piazza, if you remember from when I was talking about 60 Atlantic, we created these kind of service pods, which were wrapped in Corten steel, with a ramp which created accessibility, which linked into the different pieces of the project. In the second phase, in 80, we did something sort of asymmetrical. So pulled the main lobby right into the center of the building, creating an asymmetry of these two ramps around this piazza, which I think has a lot of kind of natural surveillance and kind of interaction, but also I think improves the retail quality, which is probably not what would have been most obvious. It would have been most obvious to put the lobby right at the street, but I think it was quite successful. And here's how you can see how that's concluded, what the finished product is like. So 60 here coming across the kind of piazza beer garden got extended, even bigger. Here's the ramp that takes you down to the lobby of 80 there. So my favorite ever piece of PR that we've ever had on the Billboard website, Universal Music Canada relocated to Rockstar Building in Toronto. I think that's sort of evidence of the success of the strategy of putting the retail at the street and moving the lobby in, because Universal Music took 2 floors plus the whole retail space which they use for an event center. I think that's good, although our original dream was that the lobby would be connected through to something like a restaurant or a cafe. There is a cafe in there, but it doesn't connect through in the way that we'd hoped. Coming back to sort of an idea of how much we ought to push things in this phase of the project is this. So an idea that mass timber construction was very much in that time. In its introduction, nobody had really done anything. There was only kind of much smaller projects, no multi-story projects like this. And one of the things which, when the project was being constructed, we saw was it went up really fast when the material came, but getting enough material in time wasn't as expected, I think, for other projects. So it's good to see in the intervening time how much industry has come along to support this level of construction. The deck of the project here, so maybe I'll go to here. So this is on top of the level 1. This is when the first columns are coming. The columns are Nordic, supplied all the glue lamp posts and beams for it. Timmerman, we began with a CLT project we actually began with a 13 by 9 meter grid. Maybe I'll come back to that. But the Timmerman developed their own system, their own production facility for making nail laminated timber, which is what this became. Here's a shot of it under construction, and you can see how that all comes together. Another lesson learned is, I think when we began, I think we were quite purist about, apart from the concrete level, we wanted it to be a mass timber building. We wanted it to be all mass timber. Mass timber doesn't have the same potential for cantilevering as steel. So what you can see in here is a fair bit of steel getting added in there to support the cantilever, which we thought was a great urban move to bring the ground floor in and an overhang over that retail space. That was something that came up later, which wasn't that popular. The plan I was talking about here, you can see the retail spaces here. So this all ended up being Universal Music. Here's the ramp that comes down and goes into the lobby. It's a very simple very simple core, which is these elevators, a scissor stair. And then the floor plate above is pretty much this simple, although the grid has changed from this. We had a grid originally, I said 13 by 9. Which resulted in tremendously deep beams. That got switched to 9 by 9, and then eventually to nominally kind of 6 by 9-ish. We did a lot of studies on that. The advantage of the nail laminated timber is it was quite a bit more affordable, but could only span 6 meters. We did a lot of studies on office layouts, and it didn't make that big of a difference to switch from 9 by 9 to 6 by 9, which goes against the conventional wisdom. again, this comes back to we wanted to make sure this got built because there's in a kind of private sector plan, there's a spreadsheet somewhere and everything has to line up. And so while there is an aspiration for doing something great, it doesn't always overcome cost challenges. So we were flexible in our vision for how that could be accomplished in order that it was accomplished. What happened here is that we have the beams all spanning in a north-south direction, and then the core in the gray area. And the core is doing a huge amount of work. It's doing all the lateral work. It's because there was no ULC ratings for penetrations through the deck. All of the vertical penetrations are coming out through the core and then into the floor space. So it's like a massive block of concrete doing all of the lateral work while at the same time it's Swiss cheese. Here's the difference between, as you can see, cross-laminated timber and nail-laminated timber. Probably a lot of you know what that's like. No, it looks pretty good actually. It looks it's got the kind of the old warehouse aesthetic. The advantage of it is that it's made by a lot of people. We did a lot of studies. What's the most economical way for this to work? 51 nail-laminated timbers panels per floor. They span for almost 12 meters, but are 6 meter. Sorry, they're 12 meters long, but only a 6 meter span. This is a sort of a cutaway section showing the. Let's go off here. You have to tell me what the time is because the things happened. But I was really pleased with Stephen's acoustic kind of overview there because, and I agree, you should get him in as early as possible, even if just to explain what all those acronyms are. IIC, NRC, DB. We have almost exactly one of the assemblies that he described. So it's nail laminated timber with an acoustic mat with a lightweight concrete topping and then a raised access floor system on top of that. The mechanical distribution, as I was saying, is all vertical through the core and then comes out in the floor space. So that did make, and also I was saying before, we had to fit beneath this 18-meter kind of floor height, so we were pushing down. So there's a lot getting squashed into a lot of things. So we ended up with about 400 millimeter raised access floor system, which was really tight. This is the green roof, as you can see, and you can also see here the north facade and how much less exposure there is in that facade. You've probably seen lots of studies like this. Concrete, steel, wood minus 1,000. When we were doing this, we had an idea that it was going to perform really well, and then we worked with our WDI after the building was complete to kind of come to an understanding of how much that embodied carbon really was. And I think the study was great. This diagram probably took me a couple of years to understand exactly what it means. But what it says is that the reduction in embodied carbon is equal to approximately 22 years of operational energy, which is quite significant considering that the building's only 5 stories and there's only 4 stories of mass timber. So this is the building in the end. This is the team that worked on it. We got a Governor General's Award for it last year, which is quite exciting. As you can see here, there's a big team that works on these projects. In our office, there's a big team. Wayne's sitting up there somewhere. Give a little wave, Wayne. He made it happen in the end. But lots of other people. What I was just going to show in the end, just in conclusion, is a couple of other projects that we've worked on since and what we did with it. So this is a project in Ottawa that we worked on. Which eventually there was some sort of credits for keeping existing buildings, so the project got canned. But it began with an idea of putting all of that lateral structure into the core is really challenging. So this one had the lateral structure as an expression in the wood. That continued also into this project, which still is kind of going on, although going quite slowly. As I think if any of you are working in office buildings, you probably find no one's going at ultra high speed to deliver a new office building. We began with this project: should it be steel? Should it be wood? I think from our position in the beginning of purism, it's come much more to trust materials for their properties and use them as applicable. So this began like this. Actually went to a steel frame with wood decking and kind of in combination, which you can see here on some of the studies of the inside. So it's sort of the primary structures in steel, secondary structures in wood, the laterals in wood. Another project similarly, which is in the approvals process on the east side of the city, that's also being done in a similar way with a steel structure and wood deck. Well, that's also 19 stories. And then a project which we were just speaking, a demo from Shop is up here somewhere. Wayne and we were talking about getting the gang back together. This is a project that we were working on until COVID started in the distillery district. Metrolinx has decided to do the most egregious expropriation I've ever seen. Rather than just going like perpendicular underneath the building, they're kind of going along 2/3 of it, like right underneath. So that has put that on hold, which needs to be resolved. But this project, I think, demonstrates the future of what will happen with a lot of commercial buildings, which is multiple uses. So there's retail in here. There was an academic use that was in here. There was a kind of hospitality on top, all in the guise of a commercial building. So I think that we're going to, because of the office market being what it is, I think we should be prepared for more complexity, more things coming together, and do our best to make them as wood as possible. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Patrick. So we have some time for Q&A for any questions from the audience. Anyone that has any questions? Richard?
Yes.
Thank you for that. What was the key business driver for your client to go with mass timber? And roughly, do you know the difference in cost for a conventional building with, say, concrete?
So the project began with wood as an option. So we could have done an 8-story building in that location. We had discussions with the planning department at the city, and they said 8 stories will be fine. And then we said, you could do this. You could also do this 5-story building in wood, and it will be completed in much quicker and won't have to go through a rezoning process. So it was felt at the time that the absorption rate was appropriate for a 5-story building, so it would fill up in the right time. The 8 stories would take too long, and then ultimately the numbers wouldn't work out as well if they had to wait as long and get all those tenants in order to start. Plus, it was an option for a niche product that nobody else had. Nobody else had a mass timber office building. So from, we didn't say this has to be wood. We said these are the options, and they chose wood. What I've referred to in the past as the right qualities over the wrong quantities. And I think it was, I'm sure that they wish they had an 8-story wood building there now, because it leased really quickly. I don't think they were, I don't think anyone in Toronto in the past 10 years has been quite prepared for how busy things have been and how fast they've grown. But I think the leasing of this was really successful. In terms of the cost, it's quite hard to pin down, and I think Ellie from Hallmark is going to be on a panel tomorrow, and you should probably ask him. It was definitely more expensive, but very hard to isolate the difference in cost from it being a mass timber building, because there were 3 stories of very uneconomical concrete underground parking, which took ages. Also, during the course of the project, there was like an unbelievable, something like 50 weather days. So things were getting delayed and pushing costs. Once the wood came to site, it went up really fast. The crew would show up. There was only, I think, 3 people. They would put up, a whole floor in 2 days, and that was fantastic. Then it took a while for the next batch to come. But I think definitely would have been more expensive. But I think being the first, that isn't surprising. And I'm not sure. I don't think it was the wood that made it more expensive. I think it was other factors.
Thank you.
That microphone doesn't work, by the way.
Anyone else have a question? For Richard? Any other questions for Richard? No?
Great. Thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much.